Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait,
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
and we're coming to you again, good graces of Zoom and Manhattan Neighborhood Network. We're actually doing this the Thursday after the Tuesday election, and everything is still in a state of flux. And guys, I don't know where your counting is, but the last time I looked, Joe Biden was sitting at 253 electoral college votes to 213 or 265 to 214, depending on whose counts we're trying to deal with. I believe the AP may have the higher numbers, and the question is what's going to happen between now and Monday when this show airs. So, Bob, what did you see about where Donald Trump and his people are going? You mentioned something earlier about the clown lawyer, whatever. What's with the legal challenges?
Well, I mean, at this point, like you say, as we speak on Thursday before we air on Monday, yeah, it's all still up in the air, and Donald Trump has already engaged his attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and his son, Eric Trump, to basically start this narrative that the votes being counted after election day somehow are fraudulent, somehow don't need to be counted. So he's in Nevada. He's in his lawyers are in Nevada, in Arizona, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, wherever there is an issue with counts still coming in. He's rattling the saber, saying that these votes need not be counted and somehow these votes are fraudulent. And one by one, the secretaries of states and attorneys general are saying this is the way it's done. You count the votes.
So there is by law, I know Wisconsin went to Biden and Donald Trump is challenging that. And of course, there because it's less than 1 percentage point separating them, that's a mandatory recount in the state of Wisconsin. So
It's not mandatory, but it's doable. They
no,
need
no,
to
no,
get the full.
it's automatically triggered if it's less than 1%.
Yeah.
And so that's already on the books for a recount. Unless Biden's lead gets to more than 1%, then of course it's not triggered automatically. And of course the Trump people have already said they're going to be demanding a recount in Wisconsin. He's got lawyers in Michigan already. I think you just told us that. He already had filed a suit in Pennsylvania prior to voting day, depending on trying to stop votes from being counted, even if they were postmarked before election day. If they came in after election day, they didn't want them counted. And so that was the suit saying you can't count them after election day. And the state Supreme Court had said 3 days after is good. And they went to the Supreme Court and they didn't rule on it. And they said you could always bring it back. I believe that's one of the three. But Ray, what have you seen about his people trying to deal with not getting votes counted or counting votes that may still be going on when the show airs?
Well, I don't know, but I don't understand. Explain this to me first. Why, if it's postmarked before the election, it's not counted? I don't understand the reasoning behind that. If it was in the mail, a correct ballot, and it was postmarked before election day, why can't that be counted? I just don't understand those laws.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but no, that's actually how voting always was counted in this country before the Donald Trump presidency. You understand that people always said, if you have a postmark before or by election day, your vote would be counted. That's
Right.
not anything new. These lawsuits are designed to make sure that all the votes don't get counted because the Republicans are worried that if all the votes are counted, they will lose. Am I correct on that, Bob?
I mean, Ray attempted to use logic against the Trump
I always
administration.
look for
And
logic, and I never find it with the Trump party. You know, I don't understand illogical people. Like, I don't understand this country that votes for him. Half of the people in the country voted for him in 2016. The man's amoral. The people that support him in any way, shape, or form, I don't understand. I also don't understand why they don't realize that they too are amoral for supporting this guy.
So Bob, why don't you should we go
I-
down that road, because basically that gets to what Joe Biden supposedly ran on. Not supposedly, he actually ran on that. Joe Biden said this election is about the soul of the country. And so
It is.
Ray's point to the fact speaks to something you and I were talking about more than once, which is 44, anywhere between 40 and 44% of the people in this country seem to be in Donald Trump's camp, no matter what he says or does. Ray, that speaks to your immorality or not immorality.
You know,
So,
let me,
go ahead.
I want to tell you something about
Discuss.
that. L. Ron Hubbard, you know who he is, Dianetics and whatever it's called now.
Mhm.
Here's a quote from him. It says, "The only way you can control people is to lie to them. You can write that down in your book in great big letters. The only way you can control anybody is to lie to them." And he was right. And I think the people are, you were talking about fear in the country. And that's what Trump is pandering to, people's fear, economic fear, uh, fear of losing the value of their homes because, you know, undesirables will move in. Um, I don't know, but we were talking about the election. I'm sorry to get off of this, but
Actually, no.
I-
You took us to a path that Bob and I actually were talking about earlier before we started to roll. And Bob, pick up on that, because this whole bit about what was this election all about is crucial to where we are in 2020 in the United States of America.
no, Ray was dead on because if you listen to the Trump campaign speeches, especially the last few, the rapid fire campaign speeches in the different cities, what did he say? He said, we're going to prevent low-income housing from coming to your suburbs. If Biden is elected, your guns will be gone. If Biden is elected, your taxes will triple. All of which is not backed up by any fact, by any, any reasonable anything, but he panders to the fear exactly as Ray said. He panders, the lies are told in such a way to seem official, of which, which they're not. And anybody actually paying attention would see through it. And that's the problem right now. Apparently 44% of this nation either isn't paying attention, doesn't care, or likes the fact that Trump protects the privilege that they now think they hold
yeah.
as, as Americans.
Bob, that gets us to those three options that you just threw out there are really crucial, because it gets to where are we in 2020 in the United States of America. And I think this is a historical perspective, but Biden's correct about it being about the soul of the country, just like Ray was echoing. And what we know, because we've discussed this on more than one media watch, the Republicans have been using dog whistles to try to appeal to that lower base part of the American electorate for 50 plus years. Dog whistles were their rigueur, I guess is the old phrase. Donald Trump came along and said, I don't need a dog whistle. I know that there are people out there who think like I do, who are as racist, xenophobic, as however many adjectives and adverbs and whatever we're talking about to describe this man. I guess it's a description is adverbial. Who knows? But forget grammar. The bottom line is, I keep going back to the fact that historians like Bechlaw and Meacham, they're always talking about Abraham Lincoln and appealing to the better souls of the country, of the nation, and that we've been wrestling with it for 200 years. Well, we've been wrestling with it from the time the country was founded. And so we talked about the fact that there are white supremacist things in the Constitution, in the Declaration, that they have been upholding for 250, 300 years, whenever the country got founded. We talked about the fact that there are lizard-brained people that can always get appealed to because of fear. And the playbook, the fear playbook, speaks to the not better natures of this country. So, Raymond, talk
Yes.
to us about why you feel that this is an aberration, or is it an aberration?
I don't believe it's an aberration. I think it's always been there. Trump got in office and kicked the rock over. And all of these people came out into the sunlight. They said, oh, we've got somebody that will listen to us now. Let's go. People try to tell me that this is not a racist country, and I live in New York City, which is maybe one of the least racist cities in the United States. But I'll tell you, I'm 72 years old. I don't think there has been, I won't say a day, but I don't think that there has been a month that has gone by in my entire life that I haven't experienced some kind of racism, from overt to extremely subtle. And it's inbred in our society, and people don't realize that. I mean, the people who think that they're doing something about it don't realize that it's here. And it's part of all of us. We can't get away from it. You're either affected by it or you're continuing it. And that's my experience.
I think you're dead on, Ray. And I was in a different discussion just the other day, and we were talking about Trump as the master enabler, enabling these people to crawl out from under the rocks because they know they have some protection. They know, they have somebody running interference for them.
Correct. You can do anything you want because you can go on television and talk about, well, not go on television, but you can say in private, oh yeah, I can grab a woman because when you're famous, you can do it. You can get away with it, and it's just disgusting.
So that brings us to where we are in 2020 in the United States of America. 44% of these people, they could care less about his moral aptitude or his lack of morality, about he'll get down in the swamp, in the gutter. He's already raped the country and the globe financially as best he can, illegally and legally, and he's been using his White House office to do stuff like that. So here is where I'm now asking, if I think Joe Biden will probably pull this out, but let's just play devil's advocate and Donald Trump pulls this election out. He already has 3 appointees to the United States Supreme Court. And so let's just say this election goes to the courts and ends up in the Supreme Court. What are the odds that the 3 justices that he appointed precisely because he wanted conservative judges, and this last justice, Amy Coney Barrett, he said, I want her to be on the court because when this election goes to court, she'll be there to help me. He blatantly said that. So what's your take on all these stalling tactics that he's doing? Is there some nefarious plan to get this thrown into the courts so that by hook or by crook, the election is stolen by the United States Supreme Court for Donald Trump?
It seems that way.
Isn't that how Al Gore lost?
Almost, but
yeah, it was right. Exactly, Ray. Al Gore lost after the judicial interference, and through the luck of
stop the recount. Actually,
yes, correct. Exactly.
Stop the recount. Now, Donald Trump is saying, stop the count. Never mind the recount. Donald Trump is saying, stop counting the votes that are cast. In the lawsuit in 2000, it was stop the recount. And of course, the Supreme Court ruled, and I think they had a conservative majority that ruled along party lines, and they ruled in George W. Bush's favor, and they stopped the recount. Do you think that's a scenario that we're facing? And when this airs Monday, we'll know something a little bit about some of those lawsuits. So I don't know if you want to try to call them up, Bob, to at least dig into this judicial things. The three lawsuits we already talked about, the first one in Pennsylvania, the other two in Pennsylvania, if you could call those up, maybe we might be able to get a sense of whether they have any true legal standing or not, and whether he might be successful. I know they're going to be filing lawsuits in Nevada. I know they're going to be filing lawsuits in Arizona if he loses, because that has been their game plan. They told us ahead of time.
Yeah, I think I've pulled it up if I can get that darn ad out of the way. But what it basically says, if let me see if I can dump that ad from the top of the page.
Yeah.
And of course, it doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to be friendly.
Slide it up.
But the election, and of course now the video wants to run. But what it basically says is that the election is great.
Click that X in the upper box of that video. I'll get rid of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of, I'm clicking on them, but because we're up on the main screen, it's not terribly friendly as a browser.
All
But
right.
in any case, let me try to reload the page, and as I do that, I lose it. So I'm going to stop sharing for the moment, so we don't have to.
Okay.
There we go. Now we're back. But basically, as we were talking before we went on air, I believe it's Pennsylvania where the votes can come in pretty late after the fact if they're
3 days.
postmarked on time.
Yeah, they gave
3
it
days?
3 days. That was one of the state Supreme Court arbitrated that, yeah, you could go to 3 days, and they took it up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, we're not going to get in between a state court ruling and an election. Let the election go. And if you guys want to challenge it, you can challenge it. And I believe that's one of the 3 suits they're going to re-challenge counting ballots 3 days after. But by the time they get back to the Supreme Court, the 3 days will already be up, I think. We'll know by Monday whether that has any merit. But the other 2 suits were all, I think, bogus suits that were filed to get them to stop counting actual ballots, no matter when those ballots were mailed. If they were mailed before election day, if they were mailed on election day before the 8 p.m. deadline, in some states it was 8 p.m., some states it was just election day. Those lawsuits, I believe, were just filed to stop the count. At least in Pennsylvania. Right now, I don't know what the status of the lawsuits are in Michigan, because I believe I heard some pundit say, well, if they stop the count in Michigan, he'd lose because he's behind. And I said, okay, that's what happens when you just file bogus lawsuits to stop the count. but I did hear somebody else say, yeah, but he doesn't want to stop the count in Arizona where he thinks he might catch up.
But luckily, before we went on air, I was listening to the radio, and they had comments in a row from either the AG or the Secretary of States of each of those states. And one by one, they all said the same thing. We're just counting. We're counting votes. There is no mechanism for stopping it at this time. So unless they hear from the courts to say stop, and quite frankly, there's no basis for stopping counting, no matter what, and I don't mind calling them crackpots like Rudy Giuliani and Eric Trump say, because they are. There's no basis for it, and some the stories that I tried to call up basically say as much. Mm-hmm. So we'll see as of when we air whether all of this is litigated. But this is the playbook. This is the playbook. You try to delay.
Yeah, no, he laid all of that out before the election was even held. He's been telling us that since the summer. He's going to challenge everything.
Do you remember the discussion we had with Alan Singer about the previous show? I think we were talking about some of these delaying tactics. And I just heard somebody else re-articulate what Dr. Singh was saying to us. There's a delay strategy going on, and that's what some of these lawsuits are all about. And the strategy is
Right.
that if you don't get certification by whatever that date is in December, of the 270 for one candidate or the other, it gets thrown into the state legislatures. And there, it's like one vote per legislature. And because those state legislatures have the ability to select electoral college delegates, then the scenario is those Republican state legislatures will select not the electors that the public voted for in the general election, but their own slate of electors, which would be in favor of Donald Trump, and then they would go ahead and make him president. And that's one of the other backdoor ways all this delaying tactics is designed to further, so that by having a separate slate of electors, they can steal the election that way. That would be actually doable. And
But
so,
I believe it requires a tie, Eric, or it,
no, just needs no certification by a
okay.
certain date. And that's what's scary. And that's what a lot of the lawyers are trying to make sure they get these bogus lawsuits litigated quickly, thrown out quickly, so that the certification of the actual electors that were elected by the general public goes through. And this is why I keep saying, when we go back to the founding of the country, about this white supremacist oligarchic tendency, even though they put all these great principles on the docket in their document, they still structured it for oligarchs and landed white males, because that's who were in power at the time, to be able to control who ran the country. And that's why there's an electoral college. The Senate was designed that way as well, so that in small states with less representation, you still get 2 senators, no matter how small you are and how much you do not really impact the lives of the bulk of the American public. You can still get your way because 2 senators per state. Electoral college, Senate, all this stuff is designed to keep landed white males in control of running this country. People, general population, said, no, we don't like that. So that's why we try to elect people ourselves. But if you don't get a landslide, and Joe Biden did not get a landslide, even if he squeaks out a victory, it doesn't look like the Democrats are going to be in control of the Senate. And so Mitch McConnell will do what he did to Obama Biden, to Biden Harris, and say no to everything they tried to do. They were asking Biden, how come you couldn't get anything done? His answer was a Republican Senate, but he didn't specify that that Republican Senate had their own meeting the day Barack was elected and said, we're going to say no to everything he proposes. You talk about gridlock, that's beyond gridlock. That's let's not function, okay? So I'm waiting to hear from you guys. Where do we go from here?
I'm surprised that none of those legislators were prosecuted. That's obstruction of governmental operations,
Prove
isn't
it.
it? I mean,
Prove it. How you gonna prove it?
if you can't get a bill through, if nobody's voted on something.
No, they said we voted on it. We just turned it down. And because we had the numbers, we could turn it down. Can't call that obstruction, Raymond. We know it's obstruction, but guess what?
Yeah,
We're following the legal process.
But at least if we can get, if the executive branch turns blue, if Biden does win, it takes some dysfunction out of the process. It doesn't take a lot of dysfunction out of it, since the Senate is still under Republican control. Luckily, I mean, much to our surprise, the Democrats actually had to fight to retain control of the House, and we thought things were going to go the other way. And in another discussion I had this week, they were talking about the end of polling, because it seems to be, we seem to get, the pollsters seem to get it wrong. And once again, they didn't detect this uprising, this sudden spurt of Trumpers.
We've talked about this before, guys, and we've said that a lot of people who support Trump don't want to tell people they support Trump. They don't want to tell their friends. They don't want to tell if they're not going to tell their friends, they're not going to tell pollsters. And so that's why we've said it before, any poll that you see that has any giant lead, cut in half, because there are a ton of people that don't want to admit that they want to keep that white supremacist privilege. They worry about the other coming to supplant them in these United States of America. And that's the fear, and that's the support he keeps getting. Not just the lizard brains or the lizards who crawl out from under the rock, but the folk who are comfortable that their 401k and their position of white privilege and their position of power is not going to be, quote, usurped by these Black and brown people, even though the document said all men are created equal, endowed by their creator, and actually they meant men. They didn't mean women. So,
okay, and we have about we have about a minute and a half.
So that's where we are when we get, which has brought us back around full circle to our what is the status of the United States in 2020. So I mean, Ray, what's your take based on the fact that this election is still hung up 2 days after and will probably be hung up with bogus legal challenges? Tell us.
Well, Trump has been a monkey wrench in the works for the past 4 years. So I'm not surprised that everything is a little slowed down in the government. I mean, he's been obstructing and doing so many things that I don't think the government knows what they're doing. People in the White House are running around trying to keep this guy from, exploding, pressing the button or getting into a fight with some country, taking us back into another war. So there's nothing going on at the White House. I don't know what the hell the Senate's doing. And I got to tell you, I hope, it looks like Biden's going to win. And I'm very happy about that, because I got to tell you, I was really considering leaving the country if this idiot got reelected. I can't do another 4 years of him.
Bob, how much time?
Okay, we have 30 seconds, so we should probably wrap.
So you think we're in good shape?
I think we're a little better, but not good.
Right. And I think we can recover a little bit as well.
Right. That's it, folks. This has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm the hidden Raymond Peterson.
Catch us on YouTube and
on Twitter at Media Watch EVT.
We'll catch you the next time. Stay safe, folks. Coronavirus is still there.